From the Watergate building in Washington, this is Hotline TV. Now here are Hotline editors Amy Walter and John Mercurio.
Welcome to Hotline TV. I'm Amy Walter.
And I'm John Mercurio. John Edwards announced this week he is moving staff out of Nevada to focus on other early voting states. Big shocker. Amy, to what extent does this move signal uncertainty about Nevada's prominence in the Democratic race or the Republican race?
Or whatever it is. Well, yes, Republicans are also having a caucus, which everybody seems to have forgotten about because it's sort of one of those things that you, yeah.
But wasn't Edwards supposed to do well
This
in
is the
Nevada?
whole thing.
This was supposed to be the big, except for
we
Iowa,
said,
he was
when we
supposed to be
looked at
doing
the
well
calendar
here.
early on, we said this. Iowa, look, he's ahead in the polls. He's been living there since 2004. They still love him there. So in the early stages, he's going to have Iowa. And remember New Hampshire, how well he did well there. In South Carolina, he's the Southern boy, you know, coming home.
It was going to be the
and
Edwards
Nevada,
versus Richardson race
right.
in Nevada.
And
Nothing.
Nevada was going to be, it's all about labor. And now it's like, wah, wah. But the bigger question for as I like to call it, Nevada. Okay,
sure.
Not Nevada as we on the East.
I live on the East, so I call it by the, I live on the East Coast, so I live by the East Coast.
East Coast rules. That's how we roll.
Yeah.
The East Coast rules.
East Coast.
But I think the bigger question for the Golden State, or whatever it's called.
The
Silver State. That's California.
The Golden State would be California.
Sunshine
State
anyway,
is Florida.
sunshine, golden. Here's the point I was trying to make.
Please.
Is that they still will be under some scrutiny for just how well they do in terms of turnout, right?
Sure.
And so both in terms of turnout, because the whole point of having Nevada in there was to get Hispanics into the process.
That's exactly
So they have
right.
to be able to have a good turnout among Hispanics, among labor, again, another key constituency, and to show that they energized a part of the Democratic base that they can then transfer into
into the general election, right? Because they want to turn Nevada into, it's been a swing state for the past couple of cycles, but it's always trended Republican. They want to turn it in. They want to build a Hispanic voter rolls and then turn that into a Democratic state in the general election. But I mean, what happened to the Edwards versus Richardson race? This was supposed to be sort of, as opposed to everything that was going on in Iowa and South Carolina and New Hampshire. This was supposed to be sort of almost a separate fight between the second tier of the party, and it's turned into yet another example of the sort of the Obama versus Clinton race. I think a big part of it is that, look, this is Las Vegas. This is a state that's driven much more so than any other sort of early state by one campaign spot, one media market. I guess you could say the same thing about New Hampshire, but it's driven so much by that, and it's difficult, I think, for a lot of these candidates to get out there. A lot of them to spend as much time, especially if they don't have as much money, and they want to be spending more time in the other early states.
Yeah, good point. All right, next. It was a good point.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
need to
Thanks. I worked on that one real hard.
So Karl Rove fired off some parting shots at Hillary Clinton this week. Republican sources say Rove's decision to tie his exit to Clinton stems from his belief that she will be the Democratic nominee. John, what do you think about all this?
You know, in true Rovian tradition, I'm going to give him a lot more credit than he probably deserves for his genius, because he really is a boy genius, Bush's brain, the architect. No, I'm gonna lay out the potential scenario for what he's doing, which probably gives him more credit than he actually deserves. In reality, what he's probably doing is just sort of, on his way out, hitting Hillary Clinton, because he does believe, because she's ahead in the polls, he's looking at the same polls we are, and he believes that she'll continue to ride this consistent wave into the nomination. But what I think you have to look at the possibility that what he could be doing is he realizes, of course, that by attacking Hillary Clinton, demonizing Hillary Clinton from the right as he is, he does help sort of motivate the liberal base. She loves it. Her campaign, she's out on the stump. She talks about how excited she gets because of she's the member of the attack. What he's also doing, what Rove's also doing, I think, though, is sort of softening her up for the general election. You can't just sort of, give these predictions that Hillary Clinton's going to be the nominee, and then come nomination time, start to try to beat her up. I think you're going to see Rove and other Republicans, other conservatives, spend the next 6 months making sure that they build the case that they can then turn to with their nominee and start to attack them. They can say, look, we've been spending the past 6 months, past 15 years, frankly, but past 6 months really intensifying their attack on her.
Well, and again, it goes back to the whole, again, sort of semi-Oliver Stone conspiracy theory-esque, but that using her to motivate a very unmotivated Republican base. And
absolutely.
All right.
They really want that to be. I mean, look, that's what they need. They need that. They're obviously not getting a lot of traction with their field of candidates. If they can unite their base, exactly like you're saying, against someone like Hillary Clinton, it's much easier to do that than against Obama or John Edwards.
So this becomes a campaign instead of about. If 2000 was the campaign about the Seinfeld, this campaign is about nothing. 2008 becomes Bush versus the Bill Clinton,
right?
Essentially. Okay, good to know.
On the Republican side, the back and forth on immigration continued this week, with Rudy Giuliani saying that Mitt Romney's aggressive charge on this issue is inconsistent with his record. Amy, who's on safer ground where immigration is concerned?
This is where the YouTube question really comes back in. Not the YouTube question, but that the impact of YouTube, once again, we see on the issue of immigration, right?
Okay,
Romney has been tagged a lot on YouTube for his comments that he's made on everything from abortion to civil unions to everything else, gun issues, immigration.
Republicans, Reaganism, being a Reagan Republican.
You name it, right? And so we know where this is going to go. We know the attack line is going to be he flips and flops, and we're going to use these clips to show you that. All right. But now it's Rudy Giuliani who got caught in a YouTube moment making statements about immigration. Caught, I think it was in 1996 maybe, that this was captured, that sound very different from what he's talking about today on what his goals are. Here's the thing. I always thought that the way to, if you're Rudy Giuliani's opponent, I thought the best way you undermine him is you go after his 9/11 credentials, because that's the thing he really has going for him, to really question his judgment, etc. But we assumed that in the primary where people would go after him was just purely on some of these social conservative issues, on abortion, on gay issues, on guns, etc. Instead now, and that they'd go after Mitt Romney on the flip-flop thing. And the question was, what's going to be more problematic for conservatives? The guy who has these positions or the guy who said he doesn't have those positions anymore and has changed. Now I think both of them, the attack line will be the flip-flop, and I think that's more problematic still for Mitt Romney because he doesn't have a real solid identity yet with voters, where Rudy Giuliani does.
Right.
So
well, Rudy Giuliani has an identity, I think, with the sort of moderate wing of the Republican Party. Not particularly influential.
Everybody thinks they know who Rudy Giuliani is.
Okay,
That's the thing, and nobody's taken a swipe at him yet.
But he's not relying as much as Mitt Romney is on the conservative wing of the party for a large percentage of his support going into the general election. He sort of, I think, if you look at the way that the race is breaking up on the Republican side, McCain having fallen so much in the past couple of weeks, leaves the moderate wing of the party probably pretty open to Giuliani. So it's Romney, I think, who really, I think it's Romney who could suffer most, I think, in this fight, depending on how it looks. I think.
Yeah, that is, and you heard it here first, people. Definitive.
Oh my God.
We just say it how it is. We don't sugarcoat.
I've had too much sugar
Too much sugar,
today.
too much saturated fat. All right. Representative Dennis and former Speaker Dennis Hastert and Deborah Price, both of whom hold leadership or held leadership positions at one point in the majority, announced this week that they will not run for re-election. John, what impact will this have on recruitment for Republican candidates around the country?
I mean, I don't know if it'll have any more of an impact than we've already been seeing over the past 6 to 8 months. I mean, it's been a very difficult cycle for Republicans in the House and in the Senate to really
what does it
get
say
any momentum.
When the people who used to be in charge are like, and by the way, I'm not staying here anymore. But you guys come on in. It'll be great. We're going to have a lot of fun.
Look, I think it's going to be. It's already very difficult It's already been very difficult for the National Republican Senate Congressional Committee and the Senate Committee, both in fundraising and in recruitment. This is the same sort of thing we saw in the 2006 cycle, and we know how that turned out. Two more high-profile retirements. I think that doesn't add to the goodwill, but I think at this point it's very difficult to see a roadmap for success for Republicans, but we've got a while to wait.
Wow, there you go.
Yeah,
I think that was definitive and good, and I like that. All right. But you go next, because we have one last thing to say.
And finally today, Tommy Thompson decided to throw in the towel on Sunday after his poor showing in the Ames straw poll. Earlier this week, the Hotline staff talked about Thompson's legacy, and what they'll remember most about his bid.
Tommy Thompson. Didn't he kick off his campaign by insulting Jewish people?
Oh, Tommy Thompson. Didn't he do that thing once with the food chart?
You know what I remember the most about Tommy Thompson was how he said he was going to get that microchip implanted in his arm, and like he never did.
Who?
He was great on Law and Order.
No, seriously, who?
Well, he did vow to cure cancer by 2015, so we still have that to look forward to.
Well, there was the time he called for discrimination in the workplace, but to be fair, he didn't hear the question correctly and he had to go to the bathroom.
I don't know, but this opens the door for Johnny Johnson.
Seriously, he believed in himself when nobody else did. Seriously, nobody else did.
Wow, John Thompson had a huge impact on the staff. I had no idea, but
Nice.
I'd like to tell you more about it, but I really can't hear much. I'm
Having a little
having
trouble
with my hearing aid. Yeah.
Yeah, and I got to go to the bathroom. So thanks for joining us on Hotline TV.